Okay, everybody, sort of a lazy Sunday afternoon. I thought I would tell you about how you can leverage your metabolism to keep your brain functioning and as healthy as possible. Let's face it, the older that you get, the more you're going to need your brains because, you know, uh, you don't want that to wear out. You live your whole life in your head. Everything you experience is in through your brain. So you want to keep it tip top as long as possible, and you can. And so I'm going to add a little bit of content here. Let me just go to here. Let me go to this presentation that I prepared. Actually, okay, screen share and boom, here we go. Now, and that's not how I want that to look. That's better. All right. So this is a presentation I put together a while back, and for another group. So this is called Metabolism in Your Brain: Why Food and Movement Change How You Think. So first is to talk about metabolism. You know, what is metabolism? It's how your body turns food into energy. So you take in the food, then you digest the food, then there's a release of energy from that food, and this ultimately is going to fuel your brain. So you may remember from probably 7th grade science. Now I think they're even learning it earlier than that. But you may remember the powerhouse of the cell is called the mitochondria. So meet the mitochondria. Your brain cells have multiple mitochondria in them, and they are where you extract and convert the energy that you eat from food into a form that your brain and your body can actually use. So it's just like when you pull oil out of the ground, you can't just plug that oil into your car and burn it and drive on it, because your car doesn't use oil in that form. You have to send it to a refinery where it's then converted into a form of energy that your car engine can actually use. That's exactly what mitochondria do in the neurons of your brain. But here's the problem. Whenever you are eating too much sugar and processed foods, eventually your brain can only use a couple of things for energy. It can use ketones and it can use glucose, and that's about it. And so if you're overloading yourself with too much glucose from sugar and refined carbohydrates, well, then it's like sending too much oil to the oil refinery, so much that it's overflowing. It starts gumming up the machinery, and suddenly you're having the refinery is starting to break down. So what do you do about this? And what happens as a consequence of that? Well, basically, it's ironic, but your brain is actually starving for energy in this scenario, even though you're taking in a ton of calories. So this is where you start to see the brain fog happen. This is where, the little things, like you're at a restaurant, you're trying to calculate the tip, and you're literally having to pull your phone out because you just really can't hold the numbers in your head to figure out, whatever percentage of a tip that you're going to leave. Or other things can start to become more difficult. Parking your car, becomes a lot more difficult. Remembering people's names, even though that's difficult at a baseline, but it becomes even more difficult for you. Or you start losing thoughts in the middle of a conversation a lot more frequently. It doesn't mean you're headed into dementia yet, although that ultimately is where these things lead. But it does mean that you're basically struggling more. You find that it's just a lot more effortful to think. And when you're doing something particularly challenging, something that requires your creative mind and or your careful attention, well, those things become a lot harder when you become brain fogged. Another thing that starts to happen in your brain once you've become insulin resistant and when you have overloaded your body with too much sugar and carbs for too long, so that now you see the inflammation going up in your brain, you're seeing it going up really throughout your body. But there's this thing, it's called the blood-brain barrier. You see, your brain is surrounded by a membrane that it is a very privileged space, your central nervous system. The things that the rest of your body gets exposed to, well, not everything is privy to the inside of the blood-brain barrier for a reason, because it's a very sensitive organ. But when you become insulin resistant and the inflammation goes up in your body, well, then that blood-brain barrier starts to break down. Toxins start to get inside. It starts to generate inflammation inside your brain. Your brain is literally becoming inflamed at a low level. It's not like having an outright infection type of inflammation, but it is a low-grade infection. And again, remember, your brain's a very sensitive instrument. So in fact, brain fog can be the very first symptom that anybody has when they have become insulin resistant, more so than even the weight gain or the skin tags that come along, the hair loss that eventually starts happening for many people, including women. The skin changes, the darkening of the skin around the neck or the skin folds in the groin area, the axilla. These are outward signs that you can easily see, but you can typically feel the brain fog before you feel any of those things. And remember, it only takes about 6 weeks of poor eating on a consistent basis to become insulin resistant at some level. 6 weeks. So another thing that happens, there's something called Hebbian learning. This is where the saying is, neurons that fire together wire together. So let's just say you're learning to play tennis. This is just an example. It could be anything. You're trying to learn a new system on the computer at work. You're trying to give a talk to people. You've been charged with running a certain meeting or whatever it is, but it's something new to you. Well, in this example of playing tennis, at first the ball comes at you and you swing the racket and you get this feedback. Did the ball go where you wanted it to go? Did you make proper contact with the ball when you swung and hit it with the racket? And as you get more and more feedback, taking more swings at that ball, well, your brain starts registering this, and then it starts to wire neurons together to make that a lot smoother thing, so that eventually, it starts off, you got neurons firing off all over the place as you're trying to figure out how to swing this racket properly. But as the time goes by, weeks and months and then years, fewer and fewer neurons have to fire because they start wiring together, smoothing out the track, and basically it becomes almost effortless for your brain. Your brain is always seeking to minimize its output, its effort. So that's why your brain is an extremely good pattern finder. But Hebbian learning gets to be more difficult when you're insulin resistant. Those processes that allow those neurons to begin to wire together are hampered. So learning takes a lot longer. Then there's the cleanup crew in your brain. Did you know that you had a nighttime cleanup crew? So you've heard of the lymphatic system. Lymph is what sort of takes the debris away out of your body, the lymphatic system. But inside your brain, like I said, it's a privileged space. It's got its own system. It's called a glymphatic system, and it primarily works at night while you're asleep, if you're asleep. So the problem is if you become insulin resistant, your brain is inflamed, sleep becomes disrupted, and that glymphatic system doesn't get as much of a chance to work. So, the toxic waste in your brain doesn't get removed as efficiently as it should. So just another issue there that's happening. Then there's the white matter damage that starts to happen. Your white matter is really, sort of the connecting cables in your brain. It connects different parts of the brain to each other. It connects the brain to your body parts. And the white matter is typically surrounded by a lot of the structure of the white matter. The reason it's white is because it has much more lipid, and it has a surrounding type of cell. It's called an oligodendrogliocyte. You don't need to know that. There's no test on this. And my phone is just dinging and distracting the heck out of me. So they're going crazy with messages. All right. So, but that said, with the inflammation, that white matter, the sheath, think of it as like the covering, the plastic covering on any wire in your house that insulates it. If that insulation breaks down, then you got spontaneous firing. The message that's being conducted through that neuron gets messed up. It gets slowed down. You start losing white matter. You start having, slowing of the electrical impulses through your brain. Then there's the microglia. You think of the microglia. These are, cells that are basically, the best analogy I can give was like a gardener, for a gardener. A gardener keeps the order in the garden. He keeps the weeds out and makes sure that, there's proper fertilizer there and everything else. And so it tends to the garden. These cells tend to the neurons in the same way, helping to prune. And your brain is a dynamic structure. You're sprouting new connections all the time. And so these cells make sure that this happens in a proper way and not a scrambled way, and make sure that those connections are fresh and good. But if you are insulin resistant, then the microglia get sluggish, and then connections, that should break and be tidied off, sort of hang out, and new ones, it's harder for them to form. And so your brain is just becoming stagnant, literally, because of loss of these microglia function. So when your mitochondria, and that's really where all of this starts, when you are overloading your brain with too much sugar, and then eventually those cells become insulin resistant, and then you start to see the mitochondria slow their activity. They're not making energy for your brain efficiently. So it starts off sugar, then high insulin. The cells become, packed with, too much of the energy. And then you start to getting a breakdown within the mitochondria, so that they're not producing enough energy. So overall, you got slow brain power. So how can you fix this? There's a few things that you can begin to do today to reverse this whole issue. The first thing is intermittent fasting. Whenever you are not eating, then you don't have to put out a lot of insulin. You're giving your cells a break from the glucose, from the carbohydrate, and from the insulin itself. Once you become insulin resistant, your insulin levels begin to climb. They're trying to compensate because your cells don't respond so well to it. So when you go for 12, 14, or 16 hours without eating, the cells get a break. They get a chance to reorder themselves, and the receptors for insulin start to work out their kinks and become sensitive to insulin again. And the time that you spend asleep is actually, it counts. It counts toward this fasting time. So if you stop eating at 8, and then you go to bed, and about 8 o'clock the next morning, well, you've already been fasting for 12 hours. And if you fast 4 more hours until noon, well, then that's a 16-hour fast right there. And then you eat from noon until 8. You have an eating window. You have a meal at noon. You have another meal in the evening, maybe a snack, or something. But you cut off the eating by 8 o'clock and don't eat again until noon the next day. Or you could do a 14-hour fast if that seems like a tall order, or even just a 12-hour fast in the beginning. Everybody's metabolism is a little different. And so I'm not going to say that everybody has to do a 16-hour fast or they're not doing it right. I personally never do a 16-hour fast. I do a 14-hour fast. I have my last food for the day at 10 p.m. Some people would probably criticize that. Some people feel that you shouldn't have anything to eat after 9 o'clock or something. And there may be some benefit to that. But I've always found that it's just extraordinarily uncomfortable for me to go beyond 14 hours. is because I need to, I don't want to be thinking about anything. That last hour is always half hour is always a little bit of the food starts to come on my mind a little bit. And I just don't like to be bothered. So I just do a 14-hour fast, and that's worked well for me. So you do it the way that it works for you. But if you can get even just 12 hours, you're doing yourself good. Now, if you can go 24 hours and do a 24-hour fast once a week or something, there's been a lot of research that shows that fasts that long are tremendously healthy for you. So if you do a longer fast, by the way, if you do these multi-day fasts, 3-4 days, whatever, you got to be careful what you eat when you finally break that fast. There's a refeeding syndrome, they call it. So if you didn't eat anything for 3 days or even longer, 4 or 5 days, if you went a long fast and the first thing you ate was like a bowl of Fruit Loops, that could be actually a dangerous thing to do, because you'll have a slam dunk of your potassium. You need potassium to make your heart beat, and because you have this sudden huge output of insulin. Insulin will temporarily, potassium goes into the cell whenever you have a bump in your insulin. So if you're just totally primed, high and dry, you haven't eaten anything in several days, and all of a sudden you eat something that generates a huge insulin response, you can slam dunk your potassium. You can get in real trouble. So you break the fast with something like some broth or some meat, something that's like fat, like a little avocado, something, cheese, something that has a lower insulin response. But on a regular day, eat real food. Focus on real food and things that aren't refined. Whenever think of anything made with flour, so macaroni and cheese, muffins, or biscuits, or whatever, those things, what they've done with that is they've taken the wheat, the grain of wheat, and they have removed the outer packaging, which is the chaff. That's where all the fiber is. So think of it as like a time release capsule for carbohydrate, but you just remove the time release part of it. So then they remove the germ, which is where all the nutrients come in. And so that's why when you see vitamin enriched bread, well, that's because they had to put the nutrients back in, because they took it out when they made the flour. And guess who sells these companies those nutrients, by the way? Big Pharma. Big Pharma sells them. So they have no interest in you getting whole foods with the nutrients still inside. But that said, they take the chaff, the fiber away, they take the nutrients away, and you're just left with cake. That's basically what they call the endosperm. That's the internal part that tastes so good. That's what you like to eat in the macaroni or the biscuits or whatever. Add a little sugar to that, and now you're really putting a power punch of an insulin response in there. But if you're eating whole grain rice, or better yet, like black rice or red rice, it's a little harder to come by. You probably, I have to order it online to get it, but it's definitely got it's a little different texture to it, because it's still got, it's not, they didn't cook the fiber off of it. Okay. And speaking of rice on that, so try to go for, if you're going to eat carbohydrates, make sure they are complex carbohydrates where it's still bound with the fiber inside. So sweet potatoes are good. Quinoa is good. Black and red rice, or whole, wild rice, the whole grain type of stuff. It's better. But there are a lot of people I've been seeing recently that say we really don't need to eat grains at all. And they suggest you don't eat grains ever. Sounds a little extreme to me, but I get the point. Judicious with the grains. But that said, start off with your meats and fats, and then eat the carbs part last. It will slow down how fast those carbs hit your bloodstream. It will lower the insulin response. and keep your insulin levels low. So the lower you can keep your insulin after a meal, the better. And if you want to take, well, I'll get to it in a second. That's going to be another part here coming up. So, and then avoid the processed stuff. Okay. I want to throw this in here about gut wall anatomy. When you eat the fiber, with the carbs still, here's the normal gut anatomy right here. This is these are the enterocytes, and notice these little black hash marks here. These are the tight junctions. These are like soldiers protecting. This is the inside of your intestine here. This is where the food goes, and then it's broken down, and then it makes its way through these cells to the inside of your body, into your bloodstream or whatever. Just on the inside of these cells, the lining of your intestine is about 80% of your immune system. The vast majority of your immune system is lying just on the inside of your gut, because that's where you're most likely to get invaded in your body. So from your mouth to the bottom, you have a lot of defensive cells sitting there at the ready to protect you. But if you eat a lot of sugar and carbs, then what happens is certain bacteria, like these here, these P. gingivalis or K. pneumonia or F. nucleatum, these bacteria start to become more plentiful, and they eat the mucosa that these cells secrete to protect your gut lining. They eat it until it's almost gone. And then the cells themselves start to become inflamed and damaged. And those tight junctions that you see here that keep them shoulder to shoulder protecting you, they start to break down. Suddenly pathogens, bacteria can get into your body and start inflammation happening. And these inflammatory molecules that are generated by the macrophages and your immune system here, they begin to circulate around your body, causing a lot of problem, oxidative stress, and a lot of other issues, and ultimately affecting your brain as well as every other part of you. And so there's something else I wanted to say about that. So once these break down, and by the way, your gut is absolutely loaded with bacteria. When you have a bowel movement, 60% of that is bacteria by weight. There's a lot of bacteria in your gut, and you got to have them. And so, but at the same token, you got to have a lot of the right ones. You don't want to have an overgrowth of the bad guys eating too much sugar and carbs. When you eat less sugar and refined carbohydrate, and you're eating more fiber, the good guys in here start to win. They like that kind of stuff that makes them grow more plentiful, and it helps you to keep a nice, healthy mucosa, good tight junctions, immune systems in check, no inflammation. That's how this whole thing works. Let me get out of this. The third part of this, and this is what I was about to spoil in a second ago, is move more, especially your muscles. So your muscles are the biggest sugar sink that you've got in your body. Whenever they're what can deal with that sugar more so than anything else. But if you start to lose muscle, then you have less tissue that can burn up the glucose that you eat. It becomes a lot easier to get overloaded with carbohydrate or sugar. And so as you get older, muscle becomes a lot more important to your existence, to your brain, for sure. The more muscle you have, the healthier your brain will be. And so resistance exercise, lifting the weights, or doing the elastic bands, or even just body weight exercises, it's key. Now, if you're a little older, you got achy joints, here's my suggestion. If you haven't been exercising and you want to get into it, for 1 month, 6 weeks, hire a trainer that has a very specific certification. It's called a National Academy of Sports Medicine certification, NASM. Okay. Don't go to just the guy that everybody says is great, because usually it just means they've got a great personality. And they may be great, but if they've got an NASM certification, you know that they've been properly trained. and they're way less likely to do something, have you doing something that's going to hurt you in the end. But think of it as an investment in your health. You don't have to do it forever. If you're here local, well, even if you're not local, you want an exercise routine designed for you. I know an excellent National Academy sports medicine trainer. His name is Dylan Van Gilder, and he's got a little, website where you can subscribe, and then he will make you a workout just for you, tailored to you and your needs. He kind of wants to know what kind of stuff you like to do, and then he'll design a workout for you. But, I had been doing my own thing for a long time, and I was really starting to mess up my shoulders and stuff, and even my knees a little bit. And I got with him, and it's unbelievable how exercises that you would think would not really even help you at all. I mean, he had me working with an elastic band. I had never really used an elastic band to work out with, and I was like, this is dumb. And then, but then after a few minutes, I was like, wait a minute, this is getting hard. But it wasn't hurting. That was the beauty of it. It was really working me out hard, but it wasn't hurting. And so that's the key. NASM, National Academy Sports Medicine Certification. Find one. But if you want to know, message me here and I'll hook you up with Dylan. He is absolutely excellent. And now the next part. And I've just added this. I got to clean this slide up. But when you're exercising, it will make you create more of something called brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Think of this as like miracle grow for your brain. Okay, BDNF helps keep your brain big and beautiful. That's what you want. You don't want to see any withering of your brain. As you get older, you start to lose cells. You see the withering of the brain. You don't want none of that. And as long as you've got a lot of BDNF going out, you slow that process down tremendously. The best way to do it is through moderate, or better yet, high intensity exercise. The more intense the exercise, the more BDNF you get. Just don't hurt yourself. Just do what you can. The next part is getting enough sleep and exposure to sunlight. This helps with your circadian rhythms, getting that exposure to sunlight during the day, at least 15 minutes. But again, I told you before that your glymphatic system, that system that helps get rid of the toxic waste in your brain, it works primarily at night when you're asleep, if you're asleep. So you want to get that sleep then. But also, if you miss sleep, another thing happens. You have a circadian rhythm with something called cortisol. Cortisol is going to surge in the morning. And if you lose sleep, then you become even more, that cortisol surge will make you insulin resistant temporarily, but it gets even worse if you miss sleep and you screw up your cortisol curve, and you end up it's supposed to peak in the morning about 6 a.m. and sort of dwindle down over the course of your day. It's a stress hormone. It helps prepare you for the day. But what will happen is you may have a delayed spike, and then it's sort of higher in the later evening than it should be, which is going to make you hungrier. By the way, the effect of sleep deprivation is it makes you crave sugary, high-fat stuff. And then on top of that, you're already in this hormonally insulin-resistant state. It's just a terrible thing to do. If you can keep from losing sleep, don't do it. Try to get into the bed at the same time. Exhibit good sleep hygiene. If you don't know the tenets of sleep hygiene, look it up. That's outside of the thing. Google it. What is sleep hygiene? And start to practice that. So a quick recap. The power plants in your brain, the mitochondria, they need steady fuel, but not an overload. Okay. So, and if you do overload the system, then the fence, the blood-brain barrier will start to break down. You'll start to have invaders and toxins getting into your brain. Then get the nighttime sleep so that you can also properly get rid of the nighttime waste through the glymphatic system, and make sure that these these mitochondria can produce the energy that your brain needs for the neurons to work well, to preserve the white matter, and to make sure those microglia, which are like the gardeners of your brain, to make sure that everything's pruned and working in nice order, keep working properly. If you do all those things, and then avoiding the sugar and carbs also brings the inflammation down. Becoming sensitive to insulin by fasting brings the inflammation down dramatically. This can begin happening in as little as just a few days. And after 2 weeks, you can have undone a substantial amount of what you've been doing to it for years, just in 2 weeks. And the first thing that people always notice in that first week or so is how much less brain fog they have, how much clearer they think. It's always the first thing I hear from people, and then the weight loss usually follows. The energy levels come up. It's fantastic. So I hope you found that helpful there. Now, getting rid of, sugar and getting that out of your diet is a tall order for a lot of people, but that's really a key move in all this. Because if you're insulin resistant, the problem is you've got these high insulin levels at baseline. In fact, the first thing that some people will see before they become a type 2 diabetic is they've got low blood sugar when they fast. You go to your doctor for that routine checkup, that what they call a well check, and they're going to check a fasting glucose level. And if yours is a little lower than the normal, that could be a sign you're actually about to become a type 2 diabetic. From there, they got to do some more testing. They can do, like a glucose tolerance test, or they can, check a fasting insulin level, or what they call a HOMA-IR is a calculation they can do off of your fasting insulin level to figure out if you're insulin resistant. And so if you have high circulating insulin levels, what it does is you eat something, that muffin in the morning or whatever, and the first thing that's going to dumb you down. Okay. And the second thing is it's going to spike your insulin even higher. And then it's going to slam dunk your blood sugar after about 90 minutes. And guess what? You're going to be hungry all over again. So what you need is something that will help blunt that. Fiber in your diet helps to blunt that sugar spike. And it can help take away those sugar cravings. There's also another little magic. This right here. This is what I've been sipping on this evening. I've been drinking this now for 3 years. It is called Unimate, and it has a bunch of something called chlorogenic acid in it. Chlorogenic acid has a direct effect on your cells to make them sensitive to insulin again. And so, in fact, the last time I had my fasting insulin checked, it was so low it didn't register. It was less than 2. So you want it less than 6. If it's over 12, you are on your way to becoming a diabetic. Many people would say it's not ideal if it's over 8. Many people want to see it over 8. The really orthodox health people say it should be less than 6. And but mine was, thanks to this. And by the way, I'm genetically at risk for becoming a type 2 diabetic because my dad had type 2 diabetes. So that's how well this works. It will help suppress your appetite. It raises your GLP-1. I'll put it up here if you want to try this. I learned something, I know I'm a boomer, but I learned something recently. I'm going to show you this. All right. This is a QR code. And if you screenshot this, I didn't know this. I'm sorry. I'm feel like a dummy for not knowing it. But if you screenshot your screen right now, and then go into your photos where this screenshot is, and you hold your finger down on this QR code here, well, then it will take you to the website there. If you want to try this system, this is a 2-pronged system. One is a fiber. It's a patented collection of fibers. I don't know precisely how many fibers in it. There's probably about 10 to 14 different plant sources of fiber, which is the magic in it, that will help to slow down how fast the carbs hit your bloodstream after you eat something right after having drank that fiber drink. The second part of it is the Unimate, this right here. which will raise your GLP-1. It will make you feel less hungry. It will help resensitize your cells to the effects of insulin, and it will lower your body inflammation. The system was instrumental in helping me break the sugar cravings. I had them really bad. I had really bad carb cravings, and I got ahead of it. I got control once I got on this system, and I just use it religiously now because we live in a bad food environment. It's not practical, for everybody to be able to meal prep every week. So I just live by it. So screenshot this right here. Hold your finger down on that QR code. It'll take you to the site where you will get a permanent 32% discount on this. It's normally $235 a month. Here you can get it for $159 with your subscription. And that's a permanent discount month to month. You also can trial this system for 90 days and still get your money back. So they have a 90-day money back guarantee. You can try this through Christmas and through January and still get your money back if you're not pleased with what it does for you. But I know that you will be. After referring over several hundred people to this system at this point, I have not encountered one person yet who didn't get exactly what they wanted out of this, provided that they were taking it as they're supposed to. So I hope you found this helpful. I'm going to end it here, and I'll see you then.